Hey guys, from what I realized is that I sent you the blank test, but I didn't send you an answer sheet. So I'm going to walk you through the answer sheet of this test. Your test should be, it's going to be formatted slightly different, but all the content is going to be the same. So this is going to be like a penultimate review video. So use this to your advantage. It's very useful. So always start off with your name. And let's get started. All right. Identify which of the following sides are opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. Now, identifying all these sides are literally one of the most important skills, because this requires and needs you to be able to do any of those trig functions, SOHCAHTOA, TOA, sine, cosine, tangent stuff. So from angle A, so you have to be standing at angle A, okay? So if you're standing at angle A, you need to know what your opposite side is, your adjacent side is, or your hypotenuse side. Let's first talk about opposite. If you're at this angle right here at angle A, what's opposite is across the room from you. So what's across of this triangular room for you is this side, which is BC. So BC is going to be your opposite. Now I'm going to skip adjacent to talk about hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is a very special side. So hypotenuse is always the side across the right triangle. So we're going to have the right triangle over here, BA, or the right angle, I apologize. It's always across the right angle. So it's going to be across here, BA. So BA, that is going to be the hypotenuse. And I'm just shorthanding it, but you can spell it the whole word. Now, the adjacent. The adjacent is the side next to you, but sadly, you could reach to this side, or you could reach to this side. Like, what side could I literally reach my hand and touch at this corner of the room? But this side over here is already the hypotenuse, and that's the most important room, or that's the most important wall of the room. So because this one's the hypotenuse, this doesn't get to be the adjacent. So it's the leftover one, which is AC in this case. So this one is adjacent. All right. So that's how you identify the angles, and we'll just do it one more time. This time with a little slightly rotated triangle, but it's fine. You're standing at angle B at this time, though. So standing at angle B, it's really important to understand you're not doing it from A. So your opposite, your adjacent is going to be different. We need an opposite, we need an adjacent, and we need a hypotenuse. Give it a second. You can pause the video to try it out. Okay, if you unpause, this is what it's going to be. AC is across of B. So that's the opposite side of the room. So AC is the opposite. The right angle across from the right angle, so across from the right angle or opposite of the right angle, is always a hypotenuse, which is AB. And then what's left over is the side next to it. So you could be this side or that side. This side is too busy being the hypotenuse, so it must be left over to the other side. Adjacent is like the leftover side. Nothing wrong with that. It's a leg of a right triangle, but it's just the leftover side. Okay. So for these ones, we need to find the trig ratios. Now, trig ratios, we can use a cheat code or a password to help us figure it out. And this password is the SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAHTOA. Now, what does even SOHCAHTOA even help us with? Well, we have 3 trig functions. And you know what? I'm going to pause and pull out a calculator real quick. Okay, if I did this correctly, that was like literally 1 second in you, well, even though it took me like a couple minutes. All right, this is going to require your calculator, but not as of right now. We'll just talk about it a little bit. Now, first off, SOHCAHTOA is sine, cosine, tangent, and you can see sine, cosine, tangent on these buttons of your calculator. By the way, you're going to need a calculator for the second half of this test. If you do not have a calculator, make sure that you borrow one from somebody else or from the school, because you need to have a calculator for this part of the test. Not this page, but the next 2 pages. So sine, cosine, tangent are my 3 trig functions. And you can see SOHCAHTOA, SCT, represents sine, cosine, and tangent. But what does the other 2 letters mean? OH, AH, and OA. Give you 3 seconds, or you can pause the video. Think, what is the 3 letters going to represent? The three letters represent the opposite, O for opposite, adjacent, A for adjacent, or hypotenuse, H for hypotenuse. So when I say so, that tells me that sine of whatever my angle is, and usually we use theta for an angle. So sine of whatever my angle is going to be OH, which is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So let's apply that to this question here. We have sine Z. Sine Z is over here. So what we need to do is do opposite over hypotenuse. So which side is the opposite and which side is the hypotenuse if you're standing on angle Z? Give you 3 seconds or pause the video. Okay, you should know the opposite side is 12 or XY. So it's 12 over the hypotenuse side, which is this one across the right angle, which is 20. We like to simplify fractions when we can. I don't think I took points off if you didn't, but regardless, it is going to be 3 over 5. Simplify fractions when you can. Usually I make them pretty simple to simplify. You could take out a 4 out of both of these. Okay. Now I see a tan. Well, now I refer back to my SOHCAHTOA. TOA, tan. So TOA and tan goes together. So the tan of whatever angle, theta, is going to equal O over A. O over A, which is opposite, over adjacent. Okay. So 3 seconds, which one is the opposite and which one is the adjacent? Okay. You can pause, of course. Opposite is going to again be 12. We already knew that actually from the side. Oh, I'm sorry. Refresh. This is tan of X. You got to be careful. So now I'm not standing here anymore. I'm standing here. So you got to make sure you stand at the right place. So tan of X, when I say opposite of X, that's going to be 16. And notice how that's different from opposite of Z, which was 12. So it depends where you're standing. So tan X is opposite of X, so that's 16, over the adjacent of X. This one is the hypotenuse no matter what. So this has to be left over as the adjacent. So 16 over 12. If I were to simplify that fraction, 4 over 3. Okay. You can pause to check that out. Let's go to the next one. And let's see, I'll just rewrite SOHCAHTOA. And then we're going to do it again, SOHCAHTOA. We need that in order to do literally every question past this one. Okay, try this one by yourself. You can pause the video. I'll give you 3 seconds though. 3, 2, 1. Okay. If you did cosine C, you should have used ca. So that means cosine of, in this case, Z, is going to equal the adjacent of Z, which should have been your 15, over your hypotenuse of Z, which is 25. 15 over 25, you could simplify that to 3 over 5. Next one, sine of Z. So sine of Z is so. So SOHCAHTOA, so sine of Z equals, it should be opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm standing at Z, the opposite side is 20. 20. And the hypotenuse is still the same, no matter where you stand. The hypotenuse is still the same because the hypotenuse is always across the right angle. So 20 over 25, which should be 4 over 5. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so we have here, find the missing value, round to 1 decimal point. Usually when you see something like round to 1 decimal point, big hint, you need a calculator. But you should also know you need a calculator. What we're looking for is a side. Now we have 47 degrees at angle A. We have a 3 as a hypotenuse, and we have an X. Since we're at angle A, I need A to equal some combination of if I'm standing at A, hypotenuse and adjacent. Well, what do I do? How do I tell which one to use? I go back to my cheat word or my password, SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. So I use that to my advantage. Now, I know I need a hypotenuse and I know I need an adjacent. I don't know what X is, but I know I need a hypotenuse and I know I need an adjacent. So which one of these uses adjacent and hypotenuse? I feel like I'm like kind of like in a Blue's Clues episode, but this is it, cosine, the CA. So adjacent hypotenuse is CA. So that means I'm going to take the cosine of A to equal the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, here's my big issue. I know the cosine of A. Cosine is 47 degrees equals the adjacent, which is next to the side, that's not the hypotenuse, which is X, over the hypotenuse, which is 3. Now I'm trying to solve for X. And anytime we algebraically solve for X, we times 3 to both sides and cross that out. So 3 cosine 47 degrees equals X. Now the question you could ask me is, wait, Mr. Tobel, I have no clue what 47 degrees is. And I'll be like, yeah, I don't know either. But you know what I do know? How to use a calculator. So let's all look at this for the calculator, okay? You're gonna have to pay attention closely because I don't know if it tracks my mouse very well. So you're gonna have to depend on it. All right, I turn it on. Now, the first thing you have to click and make sure, I don't put this in the instructions on your test because we make it up in the lunchroom or during lunch, is you're gonna have to click mode and you have to go down to this option, degree. You gotta click right and enter it, okay? You gotta make sure degree is highlighted. If you're borrowing a calculator, make 100% sure it's highlighted. If you're using your own, and if you practice this, you should put it in degree first, and then you'll be able to do all this. Okay, I'm gonna clear the page, but just to know, it's still highlighted. So if I click clear, I'll go back to the normal screen, which I need. Okay, you have to make sure it's mode in degree, and I'll put that in the instructions for your makeup test. Here, we have 3 times cosine 47. So what I'm going to do is literally type 3 times, I have a cosine button right here in the middle, 2 above 8. Cosine 47 degrees. And that's why we have to click mode degrees, so it knows it's degrees, versus something else called radians. We haven't talked about radians. I'm not sure we meet it in our school year, but that it is. Okay, so we got 2.0459958, but I said just round to 1 decimal point. So 2.0. 4 doesn't round it up, so 2.0 is your answer. So what is the process? Look at what you have. I have an adjacent and a hypotenuse. Use SOHCAHTOA to decide which trig function you need to use, and then solve algebraically, so X is by itself, and then do the math. Next one I'll do with you. Okay, looks like I have angle A again. This is the opposite, so I have an opposite. And this one is next to it, but this is the hypotenuse, so this has to be adjacent. So I have opposite and adjacent. So I have opposite and adjacent, so I have to look at my SOHCAHTOA, which one uses T, or oops, which one uses O and A. So uses the H, so that's not it. Ka uses the H, that's not it. So TOA is the only one that's left over that uses the O and the A. Remember, the O and the A tells you what order it is. So it's always going to be O over A, or opposite over adjacent. So let's plug in all the numbers. So this is going to be tan of 41 equals opposite, which is 4, over adjacent, which is X. Now, my X is on the bottom here, kind of annoying. So what I'm going to have to do is multiply on both sides, X. Cross out the x's, so I'm left with x times tan 41 equals 4. At this moment, x is still not by itself. I got this tan 41 right here, and that's annoying. So instead, what I'm going to do is divide tan 41. Which means I'm going to divide on the other side, tan 41. Because they're being multiplied to each other, I divide it on both sides to get rid of it. So I'm left with x equals 4 over tan 41. Now as x by itself, I swing my head over to the calculator and now do the calculations. 4 divided by tan 41, close parenthesis. Always close parenthesis to be safe. Even if you don't, you just look at the right answer, but you just want to be safe. I click the enter. My decimal seems to be 4.6. So my answer is 4.6. Right. This one, you guys try. Notice you're at angle B this time and use that to your advantage. What does this have to be? Try it yourself. Remember SOHCAHTOA. Pause the video. 3, 2, 1. All right. So if you have tried it, this is what you should have figured out. This is your hypotenuse, and this is your adjacent. If you made a mistake here, pause the video and try it again with the correct labeling. Now, it's adjacent hypotenuse, so you should have used CA because it has the A and the H. So cosine of 60 equals 11 over x. Or, because I made a mistake, I have to fix that. Adjacent, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 11. If you don't have this, check that now. If not, try to write it down, pause the video, and try yourself. Okay? So I don't like having 11 here, so I'm going to have to multiply 11 on both sides to get rid of this. So I got 11 times cosine 60 equals x. Now x is by itself. I swing my head over to the calculator. So 11 times cosine 60. That gives me exactly 5.5. Now, if you remember your 30, 60, 90 triangles or the 45, 45, 90 triangles, you could have technically done it like that too. But I don't expect anyone to remember that. Honestly, if I was taking a test as a student, I wouldn't have remembered that either. So you don't have to sweat that. But it is perfectly 5.5. I know you're kind of weird because the other two are like crazy decimals, but this got you exactly 5.5. But it should be 5.5. Okay, let's get to the last page of that test. All right, this one's slightly different. First off, analyze why is it different. Okay, if you pause the video and you're finished, what you should have saw is that the angle is missing. So that changes a lot. So what are we going to do? Well, let's do a little bit of math. Let's set it up still. If angle A, and I know I'm looking for angle A because I have angle A here, also the theta is angle A. That means I have a 13 over here and a 12 over here. I should identify what sides there are. Again, identify the sides is the baseline to solving any of these problems. So then you have this one is a hypotenuse, and this one is this is next to it, so adjacent. Then I got to use SOHCAHTOA. You should have written this down somewhere already. So SOHCAHTOA, which one uses adjacent hypotenuse? Good job. That is CA. So we're going to use cosine. I don't know what this is, so I'm going to leave it as theta. Theta is like a variable just like x. Adjacent over hypotenuse, so 12 over 13. Now my big issue here, my big issue here is the cosine is like constricting around my theta. I can't divide it out because it's not like a multiply cosine. So what I need to do is a very special formula or a very special trig function, which makes sense what it is. It's gonna be, and what I'm gonna do to both sides is consume it or surrounded by a special one. If this is cosine, we're going to do cosine -1. So cosine -1 from the left and the right. If I do cosine -1, that erases the cosine. Now all that leaves over is the theta. So theta equals cosine of -1, 12/13. I should say, definitely show your work for this test, because if you get this right and you just have the wrong number, then I realize, oh, you must have just typed it in your calculator wrong, so I'll give you most of the credit. If this doesn't match what should be happening, then I could figure out better, like, oh, this is what you got wrong, and I could correct that and give you partial credit more appropriately. So here's cosine of -1. So what does that allow me to do? Well, I'm going to click second cosine, 12/13. Now, how did I get the -1 here? You have to make sure you click the blue button first, then click the cosine to get the cosine -1. And that works for all three of them, okay? So make sure you hit that blue button first before you get the cosine, especially if I'm dealing with cosine -1. But after you set up the cosine -1, you literally type in your calculator 22.6. So 22.6. That's it. It's pretty simple. You just got to set it up and type it in. Usually you got to set it up and do algebra. This is even easier. You just set it up and type it in. So, okay, same setup here. We're looking for the angle. First, identify what these are. Now you should identify this is adjacent and this is hypotenuse. With that in mind, identify what SOHCAHTOA you're going to use. Adjacent hypotenuse, that's COS, so cosine. So cosine of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 4/5. Let's see. Well, I have cosine surrounding my theta, so I need to do the opposite of cosine, which is cosine -1, or what we call inverse cosine. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. Which means what I'm left over with is theta equals cosine -1, 4/5. All right, cosine -1, 4/5 is theta. So we just literally type that in the calculator. Second cosine, make sure you click second first. You need that -1, 4/5. So that gives me 36 points. I should round up properly, 9. I should technically put degrees. If you forget to put degrees, you never lose. No one has ever lost points for that for me. So if you don't put degrees, that's okay. But it's technically 36.9 degrees. All right, pause the video. Try this one yourselves. Okay. So your first job was to identify this and this. Since your angle's at B, because it says it here, and this is your theta, you're going to the opposite, and this is not the hypotenuse, and that's the adjacent. So opposite, adjacent. Opposite, adjacent. What is that? SOHCAHTOA, OA, OA. So that's TOA. So tan. So the tan of my theta equals SOHCAHTOA opposite over adjacent, which is 7.7/14. Well, let me set it up. So tan -1 on both sides. And then this side, tan -1. So I'm left with theta equals tan -1, 7.7/14. Oh, I forgot to click second, so I got to clear that. Second tan, so I got the -1 up there, 7.7/14. If I click enter, I get my number 28.8. So guys, I just went over the test with you. It's a straightforward test. It's technically one skill. If you know what SOHCAHTOA is, you literally pass the test. It's that easy. So make sure you know your SOHCAHTOA. And very important, make sure you can identify what sides are which, because you have to identify it correctly, then use SOHCAHTOA correctly. As long as you can do that, easy test. All right. All right, I'm going to sign off. If you need any more help, don't be afraid to send an email. Wednesday, I probably won't be in school because I have to get my second vaccine shot. So if that occurs, it's always in the testing box in the testing room, which I'm going to assume is the auditorium, but I'll update you if it's something different. Have a wonderful day, guys.